Question number 4, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Has GDP per capita growth declined over the last 2 quarters, and what reports has he seen that this trend will continue for the next 2 quarters?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, no and none.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
The supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it in fact correct that for the first 6 months of this financial year, GDP per capita growth was minus 0.2%?
Order. The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, if it would be some assistance to the House if the member could tell us whether he's talking about nominal GDP per capita or real GDP per capita, because they both fluctuate. And they fluctuate because inflation fluctuates, and also currently because the population is growing so fast.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Grant Robertson.
That was a very specific question about the first 6 months of this year. I gave a figure.
Well,
you can answer either way, Bill, but you still have to answer.
And the answer was address the question certainly by saying if the question was more specific. So I suggest the member now proceed with specific supplementary
question, Mr
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Grant Robertson.
Is it in fact correct that Treasury is forecasting growth dropping below 2%, and with immigration continuing at high levels, the economy will continue to fail to keep up, which will mean continuing negative per capita economic growth?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, it's quite possible the economy could, by the end of this year, be growing at an annual rate a bit under 2%. The indicators are that next year it'll pick up a bit if you believe the services and manufacturing indices. With respect to population growth, it is surprisingly strong. There's no doubt about that. The number of people who want to stay home under this government compared to the number who left under the last government has been a big turnaround, and wouldn't be surprising if per capita incomes were flat to falling for a while.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer, how then can he be satisfied with an economy that cannot generate the jobs or activity to match population increase?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't think the government's indicated it's satisfied at all. In fact, part of the key to this government is relentless dissatisfaction about what can be achieved in New Zealand. That's how we achieve a brighter future, by keeping at it. But it's good news that more people stay in New Zealand, and that we've had now the 6th month of a net inflow from Australia, something that hasn't happened since we've been measuring it.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
How can it be good news for New Zealanders that unemployment is still up around 6% and that high levels of immigration are not being matched by economic growth, and in fact what they are leading to is higher housing prices in Auckland?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the members, both of those things the members pointed out are correct. That is, the measured unemployment rate isn't dropping as fast as we would like. In fact, it may well be rising at the moment because the number of people showing up to the labour market is growing faster than ever. And despite the fact this economy is producing tens of thousands of new jobs a year, it needs to produce even more than it currently is if we're going to drop unemployment.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Will he do anything differently in face of a slowing economy, or is he simply prepared to outsource to the Reserve Bank, responding to what is now a sluggish economy?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, I think, as I've pointed out to the Minister, to the member previously, and to ministers actually, the government can't chase quarterly or monthly economic figures. In fact, it can't really influence 6-monthly figures. We focus on the longer term, as you'd expect a government with vision to do, and that is funding the research and development and support for business that backs innovation, getting the levels of educational achievement up, particularly among those with the lowest levels of achievement, so that they can be long-term contributors to the economy, and negotiating the kind of free trade agreements that Labor oppose, which will open decades of opportunities for our businesses.
Question number 5, Nook Karako.